Welcome members of the public, my staff, and fellow commissioners. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Brennan? Here. Commissioner Caravano?
Here.
President Mateusz?
Here. All right, I don't have any public comments at this point. Is there a staff recognition? Hearing none, let's go on with the consent calendar.
So moved.
And I would like to pull both items off consent.
All right, then let's go to item number 1, approve certified employment list for district positions. Could we have a staff report, please?
Okay, Marcia, her husband took ill again, so I sent her home. My understanding is that the certified list being approved by the board is required, and that we had done testing and we now have a new list.
And
That's all I know about it.
I have a question when it's time.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan.
Just wondered if maybe Stephen Miller could explain just briefly why we have to do the certified list.
So I'm not sure I'm the right person to give that explanation. Glenn may know better than me. I tend not to handle directly employment issues for the district, so I'm not sure that I know the answer. I'd be happy to look into it and get back to you on it.
I was told that that was our policy, and I think it would be a great thing to look into this and see if it could be modernized.
So meaning that we might not need to do it this way?
Yeah, it's hard for me to figure out what purpose it serves.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, so that helps. That was my only question about
Assistant
that.
Harbor Master Draper, do you have anything to shed on this item?
Well, we do have an opening and a couple openings coming up at the end of the year, and we have to hire off a certified list. So that's why the certified list was done, and it's been like that for the last 30 years I've been here.
In short, because we've always done it that way.
So it's like a legacy system?
And maybe
I
in
don't-
our policy and procedures, who knows?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, it's my understanding that.
Oh, I didn't see you hiding in there, Assistant Harbor Master Merlo. You shouldn't hide behind the podium,
Yeah.
or wear a little high chair seat.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that the purpose of the certified lists are for candidates that have passed the exam and passed the testing, so you have a number of candidates to draw from. So those people are considered on a certified list, so they would be the ones that we would hire from for the harbor work and for the harbor patrolmen. So, and that list is good for up to a year and can be extended for another year. So what that does, it gives us a pool if we have a vacancy that we can draw from. So that's why, I don't know why it's called a certified list, but that's.
Yeah.
It also keeps the time and the distance down. Is if we have an opening that we need to hire for,
Yeah.
and then we have to go out and recruit or and test and everything. It could be 2-3 months, and then somebody has to give 2 weeks notice. It could be 3-4 months before we can actually fill that position that's desperately needed.
Yeah, and I mentioned this in another related staff report. I think it's not a good practice unless law requires it for the board to be approving candidates, because it almost might lead people to draw the wrong conclusion that we're hiring people who are favored by the board rather than the best candidates.
It seems like maybe at a future time we could take a look at that, because if we don't need to do it, it seems like it just takes up time, and it's something that the staff could handle. I mean, I understand the need for the list and the testing, but I don't see why we need to weigh in on it. We always approve it, we just rubber stamp it, so what's, anyway, that was it for me.
So is there a motion to approve item 1?
I could make a motion to approve item number 1 on the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Caravano?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Item 2, extension of professional services contract with McCoy's Patrol Service at Oyster Point Marina at current rates through January 31st of 2016. Staff report, please.
Yeah, again, for Marcia, it's just that we have not completed this RFP as a workload issue, so in order to continue the services until we can complete it, we need an extension of the current contract.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan, you had a question about this.
Yeah, I thought we already approved this recently. That was my only question. I just seem to remember we just approved this.
We did, but we didn't extend it long enough.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I move that we approve extending the professional services contract with McCoy's Patrol Service at Oyster Point Marina Park at current rates through January 31, 2016.
Second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Germano?
Aye.
President Mateo?
Aye. And there is no old business on our current agenda, so we'll go into new business. Item 3 is bills and claims in the amount of $137,241.76. Staff report?
Just that you have the bills and claims in front of you. In Marcia's absence, Kenyip was kind enough to come to the beginning part of the meeting in case you had questions about any of the individual bills and claims.
Mr. President, I did review the bills and claims for the period ending
Sorry.
November 4th, 2015. And I'd like to ask that the board approve the bills and claims in the amount of $137,241.76.
I just had a couple questions just to make sure if I was asked.
Do we have a second before we?
I'll second.
Any, I would think we'd call for a vote now before the questions, but what is Shields Consulting? I forgot.
Okay, this is interesting. This is a very old agreement that you have, goes back to 2002, 2006, and actually it's for the state mandated claims, a law which has grown increasingly weakened over time, but basically when in the wake of Prop 13 and the GAN Act, it was there was law that if the state required government agencies to do something, they had to reimburse you. And fewer items began to fall into that. And the state wasn't told when they had to reimburse you, so what the state did is they said, oh, well, we'll pay it eventually. And for many years, at least as long as I've been in government, Schwarzenegger and Governor Brown did not fund these things fully. So this company did the state mandated claims reporting for us, and we contracted with them, and they did it for a cut of the proceeds. And this represents their cut of the proceeds for 2002, 2006. So it's almost 10 years old.
Wow.
So we don't, and I just happened to see an email today, discussion among staff in the last year or so, that I don't think we even continue to contract with them, but this is how we agreed to pay them back then. So, and they did the work for this claim, and we received the money. So,
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to watch the video to understand what you just said because I couldn't. But I'll replay that later.
Yeah, and I wouldn't fault anyone for not understanding that it's kind of a crazy thing that's becoming. In fact, I think that the state just caught up and has created a whole lot of exceptions. So I think you'll start seeing less of this than we already have, which is a lot.
And I just have one comment, which is that I had an opportunity to review the bills and claims this week, and I just wanted to mention that I thought they were in exceptional order, and just wanted to compliment the staff for doing such a good job organizing them. It was super easy to look through, and I only had one question, and that was answered very clearly. So I do appreciate that. That's all.
I was going to ask about your choice or mine.
Hmm?
Your choice or mine?
Yeah.
Advertising promotion.
Oh, I'm not sure what that was.
That was for the, the sustainable seafood,
Okay.
For the bags, the
yeah,
tote bags, the grocery bags,
yeah.
And the
Okay.
cups.
bags and cups, mugs.
Wow, those are expensive mugs.
And people love it.
And how about Ventec?
Which one?
Ventec, the last one in the first list?
The event.
Yeah.
See what that is.
That's a self-pay station.
Okay.
Ah, got it, perfect. Is that the new one or the old one?
It's the new one that's going in tomorrow.
Okay,
Does that one take credit cards?
We've always taken debit cards, credit cards, and it also gives change.
Oh, okay.
excellent. Okay, so can we have a roll call on bills and claims, please?
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Perrano?
Aye.
President Hughes?
Aye. Item 4, electronic communications, social media policy. Staff report, please.
Yeah, my report on this is short. You remember early in my time here, we contracted, or I was authorized to contract with Fundini to help us with our social media planning and presence, and had wanted to make sure we had an electronic communications and social media policy in place to protect the district and to make it clear to employees and others what our policies were and how we interact. That policy was largely delayed, by the way, by me. I was kind of the bottleneck in reviewing it and sending drafts back and that sort of thing. But we began, I think, by looking at different policies, some of which I think Commissioner Brennan has submitted, Port of Oakland. And we sent those drafts. They were reviewed by the HR consultant from RGS, Bobby Bennett, but also very carefully reviewed by a specialist with Hanson Bridget, Julie Sherman, who's a specialist in social media law. And so the changes that you see reflect my incorporating social media into the existing electronic communications policy, because it made sense to me that it be there. And the other changes are those that were recommended either by Bobby or by Julie Sherman. Now obviously, in both cases, they're seeking to be clear in our communications with employees and commissioners, anyone else that might be using it, and also to reduce district exposure. I would suggest that if the policies are to be revised in any major way or other policies adopted, that we also give legal counsel an opportunity to review that, since there can be significant exposure in this area.
I do have a public comment on this issue. Leonard Warren.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Commissioners. My comments are I think, limited to the references to email retention that I read in the packet. I think that the policy there as written is totally ridiculous and is very clearly oriented toward hiding things from the public as soon as possible. And I respectfully request that you just simply delete all the references to email retention. It doesn't belong there anyway, it belongs in your records retention policy. But the policy was written, what, a dozen years ago when disk space cost 100 or 1,000 times what it costs today. And I have to tell you, I have 12 gig of personal email on my computer at home. I figured I'd pause until Commissioner
Go ahead.
was listening.
Go ahead, we're waiting to hear what you have to say, sir.
Well, it looked like you were having a side conference.
Actually, we generally try and take notes when the public is speaking, and we don't have a single pen that works. So therefore, please continue, and I will do my best to retain or watch the tape to listen to what you have to say.
Okay. 12 gig of email on my computer at home, dating back to 1986. I probably have some older than that, but I have to find it. And if I did the arithmetic correctly, at the price of a 4 terabyte disk that I just bought, that's 60 cents worth of disk storage. So any possible justification for deleting email based on the storage cost is a completely, absolutely bogus argument. And you simply should not be deleting old email, period. There's no justification for it whatsoever. And as I said at the beginning, the only reason that I can think of why the district might want to do that is to continue the tradition of hiding information from the public. So please completely remove the references to deleting old email. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Brennan, you had a statement regarding this?
I have comments based on the staff report, and then I'd also like to talk a little bit about process. So I did talk with Joe Falcone today, who's the owner of the company who put together our social media policy, which you have there as the additional information, item 4. And Dan Blick, who is his partner, is here today in the back of the room if anybody has questions for him. So the social media policy, which didn't get into our board packet, but is an additional item that you received today, and hopefully is also in the back, on the back table. My understanding is that Joe worked really closely with Bobby Bennett on this, and that they also worked closely with council on this. And I was told explicitly by Joe that council reviewed this policy as a standalone policy and approved it. And so then it is his understanding that the policy that he had approved through council that he and Bobby worked on then was taken by our staff and adapted into this computer electronics communication, and now they've added social media policy, which is policy number 6.2.4, which is an old policy that dates back to 2005. So what we got was, we got sort of a mishmash of what our consultant developed with our other consultant. So we have Joe, the consultant, working with Bobby, the consultant, and then them consulting with the council and getting the thumbs up, and then our staff basically redoing their work and incorporating it into what we have here, which is an old policy. And I'd just like to remind everybody that at our last Finance Committee meeting, our staff told us that because our policies, many of them are so messed up, that it's easier and better to just adopt new policy and rescind old policy, because it's too challenging to try to fix these old policies. It's better to just bring in new policy that's, you know, more accurate to today's situation. So what I would like to propose is, I think we might have gone down the wrong path here, although I really appreciate staff's effort to try to make the two policies jive together. I don't think it works, and that's for a number of reasons. My suggestion would be that we separate the social media policy from this policy 624 and have it as a standalone policy, which is 2 pages, which is exactly what the Port of Oakland has. They have a 2-page policy for social media that's simple for people to follow and read. And I would be in support of adopting this policy, this 2-page policy here that you have in front of you, as our social media policy, which is what I thought we were supposed to be doing. So I think it's well done. I think that the 2 consultants did a good job, and with the help of council, they put something together that works, and it also matches up with what the Port of Oakland is currently using. And I think that probably Commissioner Bernardo supplied this, so thanks to him for providing this template for our policy. Now, you know, I could get into the weeds here on what's, you know, problematic about the way this old policy is written. I'll take a couple of points, you know, and then if I need to get into more detail, I can. But there are things in here that really don't make a lot of sense. It says things like, and this is on page 19 of 29, item 4, retention. Email communication should generally convey transitory information that has no lasting value to the district. Email should not be used to create important or lasting official records of the district. And then it goes on to say things like, email communications may be deleted from the system after 60 days. So that's a new thing that's been added. Before it said electronic communications, now it says email communications. So it's just a kind of a semantics thing, but this is very problematic. This should never have been part of this policy. I don't know of any other public agency that deletes email within 60 days. If there is one, I'd love to know who they are and I'll write them a letter. There are so many reasons why we should not be deleting district email within 60 days. I could make a long list, but it's just, it sets a really bad precedent. Number one, it's totally this is unnecessary because the cost of storage is so low now. It creates all kinds of Public Record Act concerns, and it frankly looks a bit shady. And we have been taken to task over our policy regarding document destruction, or document retention would be a better way of putting it, in the past. That's been discussed at some length in the newspaper. And I think it's really important that we have a very positive document retention policy, and that document retention policy is due for an update, and email could easily be included in that policy. And I think that would be the appropriate place for some specifics about the length of time we retain communications. And I think communications is probably the word we want to use, because communications, it encompasses more than just email, and there are other ways of communicating. But we could specify email if the staff thought that was necessary. So I would want to draw your attention to our retention policy, which we have these new, I'd also like to point out that we have new master policy handbooks for the board, which some of our board members have never had a policy book before, so this is very exciting that we finally have this. And I really want to thank Melanie for making that happen. She put a lot of work into putting these books together for us, and I think they're going to be extremely useful. And this was something that the Finance Committee, definitely was excited about. So on this policies and procedures, regarding records management policy, it's policy number 2.1.4. There are a number of different places that kind of cover communications, and I'll point out a couple, and we could certainly add email to that. We've got complaints on here. Those are supposed to be retained for 3 years for operations. We've got correspondence, which is communications, and we have a 4-year retention for correspondence, and it does not say that email is not included in correspondence. I would certainly think it's included, and that covers each department. Then on the next page we have inter-office memos, 4 years, and I would think email might be considered inter-office memos. And then on the last page we've got publications, which email could be considered a publication, and we have a 5-year retention for that for all finance-related publications. So this is the type of policy where I think we should have retention for electronic communications, such as email or PowerPoint presentations or whatever, and we should modernize that. So I would definitely support that, but I think we're kind of mixing things up here. And I'd really like to have our policies be clean and simple. I think we've had a lot of very prescriptive and convoluted policies in the past, and we have an opportunity to clean that up now. And that is something that our staff has asked for, especially Marcia, who's not here tonight, has made it really clear she thinks we need to throw out the old bad policy and bring in the new policy. And I think she's got a good point about that. There are a few other things that are a little out of whack here too, like on page 20 it says, it names different types of social media, and it uses things like MySpace and Yelp. I mean, I don't really consider Yelp social media. I consider that like a place to comment on restaurants and stuff, but MySpace, I don't think anybody really uses anymore. And then there's other types of social media that aren't included here. And then there's a whole number of other kind of problematic things. So I think what happened was we just made the social media policy way more complicated than it needs to be. And I'd support that we go ahead and approve this 2-page policy recommendation that we got from our consultants that council reviewed. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And if I need to get into more details on the issues with this policy, I'm happy to do that, but I don't want to take up too much time.
Do you recall our council reviewing the latest document in total?
No one in my office ever worked with anyone from Fondini to review this, to the social media policy that you have in front of you.
Bobby bent it.
I'm going to request that this item be tabled. Number one, we have Brown Act considerations with springing something on the public at the last minute without anybody hearing about it and saying, let's adopt it out of the blue. And number two, it obviously wasn't reviewed by council. So let's take...
Although the one that I brought forward, which you may want to change, was reviewed by Julie Sherman. I think that's, and I'm not arguing that it's a wonderful policy. I agree with what you said about our policies. I just thought it made sense for it to be in the electronic policy. I wasn't necessarily looking forward to a complete review of that. But what we did do was, when we sent the combined, and I may have sent it to Fondini as well, when I did a combined of the Fondini policy that Bobby Bennett had worked with and sent it to, finally got around to sending that combined with our electronic media policy to council. That's when council first saw it, and that's when Julie Sherman said, wait, this isn't the document I've been working with. And they had a policy that they then helped us incorporate into the old policy, just kind of explain how that unfolded. But certainly, it's your policy, you're not happy with it, table it. The other thing that I feel strongly about is that you certainly don't have to obey the advice of council, but I hope that when you adopt a policy, you at least retain it and hear it.
I'm fine.
I would be good enough with adopting this policy, but the idea of springing something on the board at the last minute that has not been reviewed by council bothers me just a little.
I'm fine with tabling it. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I'm not ready to discuss, I was ready to discuss what was in our packet.
Well, it's just whether we move ahead with what's in our packet and then amend it
How
later.
about, especially with the transition, how about a very clear motion that says, you know, we like the Fondini policy, we'd like it to be standalone from the existing electronic communications policy. But please don't let me make a motion for it, but I think this, I'm repeating what I think I heard. And, you know, have council take a look at those policies and make a recommendation.
I would not feel comfortable with that, because I think that if we were going to decide or give direction to staff, that the document should come prepared to the commission.
So you want this back on the agenda, but to specifically look at the two policies together?
Well, I think we'd have to separate them for Commissioner Brennan. At least that's my feeling.
Well, we could do, here's what was brought to the here's what's in the packet last week, here's the Fondini policy.
With council's
With
approval.
council's review, and I think we can do an agenda item where they can pick one, right? It's not a problem.
What do you
Here's
mean,
two.
pick one?
Here's one way of doing it.
Yeah, two options.
Here's another way. Which option do you like?
Of course.
We'll agendize it properly. I think that would be an option you could do.
So do we need to make a motion, or could we?
I'd
can't-
want, yeah, just to help Steve McGraw, let's get the motion as clear as possible.
So,
I mean,
okay, so I'll make a motion. So I move that we have this come back at the next regular meeting, and we're to present the board with the consultant's policy, with any, you know, with council's review, and do you really want to consider this other one again? I mean, is that what you're asking for? I just want to understand this. This policy that, so.
Well, actually, some of the things that you pointed out that were different were not different. They were in the previous policy, they were in this policy. The 60-day option, it doesn't say shall, it says may. May doesn't imply that you have to do it.
But it is a record retention item, and it really ought to go with record retention, which is a separate policy. So I think we should probably also include record retention as well for consideration as just not as a choice, but as something that's in the board
Let me explain
packet.
my smile. We really ought to do all of our policies.
I know.
So it's hard to, and this is saying where to start. You know, we've had this discussion.
Because what we've got, we're talking about 3 policies right now. Record retention, which we could easily have email in, which makes sense. We've got this funky, bizarre policy that should have gotten tossed out a long time ago, which is this policy that we've tried to adapt and make better, but still isn't working. And then we've got the language for the policy that our consultants worked on. So I think all 3 things ought to be in the board packet if we're going to have a discussion about it. But how do I make a motion?
The only way, just to say, the only reason that this one, with all the policies have to be changed, the only reason that this one is here is because I felt it was a really good idea to have that before we started getting very, in an organized fashion involved in social media.
Well, I think it's a good idea.
But
Yeah.
so the commission can decide, how much they want to consider or what. The only part of that motion that I think might be a problem, especially if we're going to include more policies, is to say the next regular meeting.
Oh, okay, tell me when.
I'm uncomfortable answering for Steve McGraw, but I think, close to the holidays, would the beginning of January be okay?
So at the beginning of next year? Shall I leave that open?
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, let me try this.
Or,
See if this-
up to the beginning of next year, because if he can do it sooner, I know he's, ready to hit the ground running. I just don't want to.
Okay, let me try this again. So I move that we table this for now. We, at a meeting in January, bring it back, and we look at 2 options for the social media policy. We look at a standalone social media policy, and we look at a combined social media and electronic communications policy, which you've already done. Or combined electronic communications and social media policy, which is policy number 624. So we're looking at those 2 options. Is that?
And the standalone will be reviewed by council.
Yes, and if council has recommended changes, it'd be great if those could be redlined and sent to the board so we can see what's being changed.
Just so that you know, based on about 20 seconds of looking at this policy, that's the first time we've seen it today, it's primarily focused on the rules of the road for district employees in using social media. Whereas the policy that I think I would recommend the board consider is a broader policy that sets forth appropriate use for not just district employees, but also members of the public who are participating in the district social media site. So there will be some considerable additional language added to the 2 pages that you have before you.
I found this new policy to be terribly deficient as well. Looked like, especially the last sentence, something that you could drive a truck through.
Okay, but I really think our policies should not be overly prescriptive. Our staff should be coming up with their own list of like do's and don'ts for social media. It doesn't need to be part of the policy. The policy should be pretty high level and pretty broad. The staff should be able to adopt, whatever makes sense.
Can we get on with your motion so we can
Well,
finish our meeting?
Okay, I made my motion.
So I
Okay.
think it was table this item until January 2016 and bring it back and look at the standalone social media and combined social media policies and have council recommend changes.
Yep.
Okay?
And I hope it won't be overly prescriptive. I'll just leave it with that comment.
Well, it is that's why you have a commission to overrule us, but obviously council's going to come up with
It will
wording
not
that
be overly
that
prescriptive.
protects the
Great.
I
district.
assure you, it will not be overly prescriptive.
Thank you. Wonderful.
before we decide to vote on the motion, I'd like to
The right amount.
ask, Glenn, when did you receive this additional information on item 4?
Took me a while, I was busy, it took me a while to get to the email, but I think it came about 10:30 today, something like that. Is that about right?
But, yes, but you had the policy from the consultant.
Yeah, oh yeah. No,
Months ago.
I had that policy, and it was part of the process. But council
We
said,
paid
oh, that's
for
not
it.
ours. Yeah.
It wasn't,
I don't think-
in other words, it wasn't requested to be presented at this meeting.
No, but our district paid the consultant to create it.
Actually, I try to remember, I don't think we've paid fund anything.
Oh, well, I
I
thought we
think this
were.
was just really great public service work they did for us.
So
Did we
they're
pay it? We didn't. Because I'm waiting to sign my contract with them until we have a social media policy.
Oh, so you're getting this for free from them?
Yeah, and they basically, I think that one of the things they did is they used their experience and looked at the Oakland policy, right? So I think that's, this is what we love to do in government, is steal from each other.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for that.
So I thought we just went through a pretty rigorous protocol for having information in our, on an agenda item. There is a certain deadlines
Through the chair,
for information.
through the chair.
I know
I'd like
that
to
this
comment.
arrived at the district office at 10:30 today. Isn't that in violation of the protocol?
Well, we have a firm protocol when it is a commissioner request. This was a staff request. We actually, we don't have a specific protocol for other materials, another policy you may want to consider, but we do have a protocol that, in that protocol, does state that we want staff to have adequate time to review the policy. Now, I would agree that in this case, we'd seen it before. And didn't produce it because and when they take a second look, they may feel different. We didn't feel it was something that we wanted to recommend. But if you've asked us to take a second look, Stephen's eager to have his firm do so. They may, come up with a way that will be a policy where Stephen can say, okay, I may like option 1 better, but I'll be overly exposed with option 2, and Commissioner Brennan will agree, oh great, well it's not very prescriptive either. So I mean, there's a judgment. What do you put in the agenda? I didn't want to put policies in the agenda that I had gone through the district's process and we'd ended up somewhere else. But it's certainly your prerogative to come back to me and say, no, we want to see the other policy earlier in the process.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a comment. So first of all, with regard to Commissioner Paravano's question about when things can be submitted for inclusion in the meeting, I'm sorry, is everybody paying attention? Something happened? Commissioner Paravano? So, according to the Brown Act, and according to Martha Poyotis, who has written to the district on the Brown Act and the following of the Brown Act, you can submit things for inclusion in a meeting. And according to the Brown Act, they should be included if they're submitted, in time for them to be part of the meeting. And I'm just quoting from an email that I read that she sent to the district. So it may not be true, but that's what she said, and that's all I know. I don't know, I haven't double checked it. But my understanding is that people can submit things like letters from the public, and that the Brown Act, to be in this, to uphold the spirit of the Brown Act, the district should make an effort to include things. And I think that we as a district want to hold the spirit of the Brown Act in high regard and make every effort to include information that might be relevant to the board in their decision-making process. It's better to have too much information than not enough to make an informed decision. So you always want to err on the side of more information, not less information. And I can send you a PDF PowerPoint presentation on just that comes from the California Special District Association. So I do have that. It is published on my website.
I'm not talking, I wasn't actually referring to the Brown Act, I was referring to our policy. And, we've been very as far as putting additional information, we've been pretty, I think we always, I think everything, unless we've made a mistake, we've done everything that we've been requested. My thinking, though, is that it is not necessarily a good policy to read something on the last day. It's nice if we can get it in the packet so that people can read it, and it's nice if we could get it in time for staff to review it. Now, like I said, in this case, staff had already seen it.
And I only received it today for the first time.
Right. And I think it's valid to say, and by the way, look at where we're going. I think that where we're going right now, or at least the motion under consideration is, well, I saw this today, let's wait until we digest it. So it's all part of the process. I wasn't arguing, for me, whether it could or couldn't. As far as the Brown Act goes, though, and putting when you can submit things, but whether or not the board should consider stuff that comes in, I'd leave that to council, but.
Well, that's also up to the board when, if somebody comes in
Let's
here and
try
makes
and
a
move
public
this right along.
comment.
So we're gonna, are we gonna
Always
take this
up to the
into
board.
January or what? If we want
So
to?
I made the motion, I just need a second. Do I need to restate it?
Or maybe Melanie could read it, if that's all right with the chair.
That's fine.
Motion to table the item until, oh, wait a minute. Table the item until January 2016 and bring back and look at the standalone social media policy and the combined social media policy and have council recommend changes. Does that sound right?
Sounds right. Somehow I have the feeling that will not satisfy Commissioner Brennan. And I would say, I would recommend that Commissioner Brennan form a committee and make some presentations, because there's going to be problems with whatever council comes up with.
Well, that was my motion, so I'm okay
All right.
with it.
Then you'll need a second. Hearing no second, what's the next option?
You could do nothing, you could adopt this resolution that was before you, you could adopt this resolution with revision, you could table it. You have all those options.
Move on to the next
Well, I've
item.
heard two people say let's table it, we just don't have a specific date, unless,
If you want to table it, that's fine with me.
You can table it with a date, or you can table it indefinitely, or until the GM wants
I
to bring
will
it back.
return with comments.
it's tabled indefinitely. Item 5.
That's always happens.
I think we have to
Okay.
vote on that, don't we? To table it?
To table it?
I mean, technically, under Robert's rules, doing nothing means that the item just goes away. Tabling something officially takes it off the table also forever, so that's essentially the same thing as just doing nothing. If you wish to identify a specific meeting at which point this will come back, that would probably require agreement by a majority of the board.
Well, I think we should at least identify a meeting, and then if the new general manager isn't comfortable with that date, he can always tell us that and we can move it back again. I think that we've had a lot of work, we've spent money on this, and we need to do this because we need to improve the public relations for our district, so I think this is important. I don't think we should table it forever. And I understand that Commissioner or President Matoush is frustrated. I do understand your frustration, but I do think we should bring it back next year. So I would prefer to direct staff to bring it back in January, and I don't see why we need to vote on that.
Well, let's vote on it, get it out of the way, and the next time it comes back, let's not insinuate things were reviewed by council when they were not. So I will second the motion. Roll call.
Commissioner Brennan?
Which motion?
The motion's on the table here.
Move to
Bring
bring,
it back in January.
and what is it
Yes.
I'm bringing back?
Oh,
Or, I mean,
you had to ask.
I'm sorry, Steve, but there's a new GM. What do I tell Steve it needs to bring back to you? I'm sorry, guys.
That's why I made the motion I made to
Which-
include what we were bringing back.
Which didn't have a second, so do you want this?
I just seconded it,
Yeah.
Oh, you seconded her motion to
Yes.
bring back the two options.
To
yes.
bring back the original, the one I said before?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, okay. So, okay.
Thank you, I
Oh.
appreciate that.
Commissioner Brennan. Now we're doing roll call.
Aye.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So this is both options?
Yes.
Commissioner Carabana.
Aye.
President Mateusz.
Aye. All right, item 5, district hiring freeze. Staff report, please.
Okay, so interestingly enough, it was my intention to put a action item for you to rescind the hiring freeze. So as I normally would do, I try to find out when the hiring freeze was enacted and all that. And the road was very muddy. I wouldn't tell you that 100%, I'm 100% certain that I got to the bottom of it, but I have a pretty good idea using the clues and some of the materials that I have put in the packet, that the hiring freeze was enacted in May 17th as a temporary freeze of deputy harbor master and harbor worker positions. And that temporary freeze is in place still today. Now, one of my favorite words has been folklore. Over the years, every position has come to you, and our staff was really surprised at what we found looking it up. And I was surprised because when I came in, I was told by knowledgeable staff, you got a hiring freeze. Which by the way doesn't apply to temporary positions, just regular positions. When Commissioner Brennan asked the question of Debbie Nixon, who I know to be honest and do her due diligence, she answered quite simply, oh, there's a hiring freeze and here's some discussion that there was. And believe me, there was a lot of discussion, but there wasn't action, except for this with the deputy and harbor worker positions. I mean, you could really do a lot of research. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe there really was a freeze or not. But what I wanted to be able to do is get to where we are now and going forward. One normally enacts a hiring freeze because you have an operating deficit. We no longer have an operating deficit. Yes, there can be an argument over whether you have funds to how we would fund our capital improvements and those sorts of things, but we don't have an operating deficit anymore. Secondly, I'm not so sure that a hiring freeze that's directed at our line workers in our core activities is the only one we would want if we needed a hiring freeze. But the most important thing is that in an ordinary special district, the general manager has the authority to employ staff. It's even part of the general manager's job description. And like we talked about the other item, bringing hiring processes to the board one at a time it has the board focused on an operational matter, not really on a policy matter. The policy matter is to make certain that you're not funding more positions than you want in the budget, which interestingly is something that has not always been that clear in at least the most recent budget document. You've approved a personnel number, but it hasn't always been clear how many of which position you were filling. I think it was assumed, oh, it's all the positions we have now, and that has been the case. So I'm saying that it would be a good thing to rescind the hiring freeze, to trust this new capable general manager that's coming in Monday to make the right decision, to manage their budget, to not hire people that are not needed, and to proceed.
I move that we approve Resolution 53-15 regarding the elimination of the hiring freeze.
Is there a second? Okay, I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan.
Aye.
Commissioner Carabana.
Aye.
President Mateusz.
Aye. Item 6. Discussion of process for appointment of a member of the Board of Harbor Commissioners. Staff report, please.
Okay, this is your item. The area that's indented is copied from an email from the president for the process. My most important message to you is to, and I know we wanted to end early tonight, but to use your imagination about how this interview will go and likely and have answers. If your goal here is that you will go into that special meeting knowing how this will work, make sure you have answers to likely scenarios. Some of the things that I thought of that weren't clear in the suggested process was, will commissioners get to ask different questions of each candidate? Will the questions be in writing? What order can nominations be taken? Because some people feel really strongly that being nominated last is an advantage. What order will questions be taken? What happens if people, because you can't make people leave the room. What if candidate or candidates don't leave the room during the interviews? I'm not saying that any of President Mateusz's proposals are bad. I just, if you're going into it with the idea that you're going to make it easier on yourselves on the 16th, which we all want, hash it out a little bit and make sure that you've given that a good shot. Otherwise, I'm real happy to stay out of it. I don't have to be at the meeting on the 16th, but I do want it to go well for you all.
Okay, we do have a public comment. Leonard Warren.
Still afternoon. Clock is wrong. Having been on my board for 18 years, I've been through, I think, 4 appointments, enough that I've actually sort of lost count, but I think it's 4. And state law gives you essentially carte blanche to decide, hey, you're going to do it. The only restrictions are you have to post it within a certain amount of time of the vacancy, and it has to be posted for at least 2 weeks before you take action, and you have to do it within 60 days or it goes to the board of supervisors. That's it. State law doesn't tell you anything else. So in some sense, it's appropriate to decide on the process, but don't make it overly complicated, overly restrictive. You need to be able to sort of play it as it goes, depending on how many applicants you have, depending on the answers to the questions. And I would suggest not putting in place a procedure more complicated than just saying you'll go around the commission with each commissioner given a chance to ask at least one question. You don't know how many applicants you're going to have, and you don't want the meeting to be 6 hours. So if you have a lot of applicants, you may need to restrict how many questions, but every commissioner gets a chance to ask at least one question, and you have to have the flexibility to tailor the question to the applicants and to ask follow-up questions, because different applicants are going to have different backgrounds, they're going to have different types of answers to the questions, and you really need to be able to follow up and zoom in. But beyond that, you can do nominations, or you can just accept motions to appoint a particular applicant, and the first one of those motions that gets 3 votes is it, and the process is done. So beyond that, I don't think you need any overly complicated process in advance, any further than what I just described. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, Commissioner comments for clarifying our procedure going forward.
I have a question for staff. On the first section of Commissioner Mateusz's comments in the staff report, it says here that there might be an issue with the date that the board would receive the applications because it's a holiday. Is November 11th out? Should we try to do it on November 10th? Is that doable?
It just so happens that because we have no regular staff working in our office and we don't get holidays, most of us were planning on being there anyway.
Okay.
So it won't impact that. As I pointed out to President Mateusz, the deadline for the applications is November 8th. Probably at 5 p.m. Probably.
9th.
November 9th, probably the, very next day we're at work, without this direction, we would publish them. But with this direction, of course, we would wait.
Well, I would just, I think that it looks like the input here was to try to give you guys enough time, because you have to check to make sure these people are registered voters, correct?
I don't think we do. I think they're supposed to certify it.
Oh,
Or claim that they are.
You can check with the county registrar to make sure that they're
Okay.
registered voters.
Provide
You don't
that.
necessarily have to do it on November 10th, but it probably would be prudent to confirm that folks are registered voters even just because they say they are.
I've had been involved in arguments where people have said that certain commissioners were not qualified to sit because of their residency. And as staff, that was not our responsibility. We would refer that to the county clerk, or, that was how that was normally handled. I don't know if the laws changed since then, but
Well,
normally that's not, if a person, hopefully no one will claim to be a registered voter that's not, or they would be eliminated in the vetting process.
okay. Well, I think that I definitely want to see the applications as soon as possible so the vetting process can get started. And so if that could happen a day earlier on the 10th, and it sounds like it could, that would be great. So I'd be all in support of.
I think they can be scanned and sent and uploaded on, I'm speaking for vetting now, I think they can be scanned and uploaded and put on the website and sent to commissioners on the 9th.
On the 9th, okay.
The
Well,
10th
let's
is
get-
Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So Monday the 9th, it could be done.
On the
Well,
9th.
They're never going to come in until 4
Oh, no, you're right,
p.m.
you're right, sorry. I've got my days wrong. I'm already making the new guy's job impossible.
I think we're just trying to make it easier
Tuesday the
on
10th.
you folks by saying to the commissioners by the 11th, but there's nothing stopping you from publishing it on the 10th,
No,
if you had everything you felt you needed.
correct.
Okay.
And we will. Whatever we have is what we got.
Well, that sounds good to me. And then the next thing is, it says here, interviewing candidates for appointment should be conducted in open session. That's the plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The amount of time for each interview should be the same for each applicant, so no more than 30 minutes for each applicant if the number of applicants is 5 or less. If the number of applicants is 6 or more, the interview time would be reduced to no less than 20 minutes per interview. I'm 100% comfortable with that.
I would say no more than 20 minutes per interview.
No.
So I had the wrong word there, because you don't want to give 30 minutes max to one, and then make the other ones go a maximum of 20 or more. That's not making sense.
Wait.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It should be no more. That's what, it's a Scrivener's error, and for a change, not mine.
Reduced to no more
Than
Than
20
20
minutes
minutes.
per interview.
Okay. So in other words, no one will have an interview shorter than 20 minutes. Okay, is that, we're understanding that?
Well, that's prescriptive. That's not necessarily so. Somebody may be able to answer your questions succinctly, or they may bomb so badly on the interview that they're shown the door and given the hook.
I see, okay. Okay, but we could go up to.
Are we gonna have a hook?
But we
I
could,
may need to come.
I think usually the applicants are pretty good, just FYI, so I think they're gonna be pretty good. Okay, fine, that's fine with me. Applicants should be asked to sit outside the meeting until they are called for an interview. And I do recall that's how we've done it in the past, and that seemed to work well. And this will, it says here, this will ensure that applicants called last don't have an unfair advantage by hearing the questions and answers in advance of the interview. This will allow all applicants an equal amount of time to formulate responses to interview questions. And I do think that all of this is very important, so I would be in agreement with that.
Of course, you know they could refuse to leave.
They could, which is their choice, of course. You know, they're not required, and maybe we need to clarify that, but I agree that they wouldn't be required to leave, because it is a public meeting, so if they want to stay, they can. But
It's just grounds for instant disqualification.
Well, that would be up to you to decide if they stay. I'm not voting for it.
well, that would be a personal decision for each
Right.
commissioner.
Yeah.
Okay, so, or let's say an individual decision, not a personal decision. Okay, so then on the second page, well, I guess what I'd like to point to now is this letter that's attached from the co-site devs, because I thought they had some good suggestions. They're suggesting that the interview of the applicant, okay, of course, the public meeting, that then when we get into the process of making motions, commissioners would, if they desired, indicate which applicants they like and why. The chair would open the floor for nominations. Here it says make a motion, but I think in the past the way we've done it is the chair announces the floor is now open for nominations, and then at that point commissioners make motions for the applicant that they like, and they don't need a second because that's our rules according to the past policy that Stephen Miller had attached in our last board packet. And then if we can't get 3 votes, we just keep doing motions until we find somebody that we can get 3 votes on. I mean, that's how I'm anticipating the process going. And of course, while we're voting, all the applicants can be back in the room watching us conducting this process. They certainly would not be asked to sit outside for the voting part of the process. Does that sound like what we're all kind of thinking here?
Sounds like it. I mean, I'd just like to make sure everybody gets up to 3 questions, and I believe we should each ask each person the same questions. I can't see us asking
That's fine with
different
me.
questions.
Should we submit our questions to staff by a certain date? That's, I guess, a question for staff. When do you need our,
Well, you're going to be asking them, so I don't even, I mean, if you want us to help you share them, that's fine.
maybe we would
But-
submit them to the president?
But submit them to the president, and I would copy Melanie just to make sure that she brings copies, but.
Okay, so we'll submit them to the board president, and should we do that, when do you want them, Tom?
Well, we need them quite soon. I mean, we got, today's the 4th, they're due, everybody has to have them to us by the 9th.
But we don't have to interview them until the
Okay,
16th,
all
so
right.
we could do it, I don't know, a few days before the meeting, or we could do it sooner.
What's the 12th?
The 12th,
Tuesday.
Thursday?
let me look at the calendar here.
Thursday.
You comfortable with that?
Next Thursday.
To formulate their questions based on the application materials they review?
Maybe, or if you want time to look at the application materials before you formulate your questions.
I definitely want to
Then
look
you
at that.
could wait until,
Friday the 13th?
as long as Tom has them in his hand, right, by the 16th, you're
Friday.
okay, so they can.
Friday the
have it.
13th, is that
Okay.
good?
That- I mean, that's almost poetic.
I guess.
Okay,
It's hard, huh?
yeah, it might be our lucky day. Why not? So do we need to, did staff catch all that? Do we need to do anything? Are we all,
I think it would be really good to have a clear motion, because
oh boy, that's a
you're gonna
long.
probably, things will come up and you'll wonder if you addressed it.
Well, I have some suggestions
Okay,
before we,
Mr. Barbano.
I would like to see the same questions asked of the applicants and no follow-up questions. One of the items I think is lacking here is the order of taking taking votes. Is the president going to do a random choosing of which commissioners will do a nomination? Or is it gonna be a free-for-all, like in, it's like rapid fire, I nominate so-and-so, and then the same commissioner can do the same thing, or else is there gonna be an opportunity for each commissioner to weigh in an orderly process
Well,
of nominating the applicant?
I'd like to chime in. My understanding is that we are going to have a process for discussing first before the board president opens the floor for nominations. We're going to have an opportunity to discuss why we favor a particular applicant. and make the case for that applicant. So it's already going to be obvious who we support. And then the board president would open the floor for nominations, and then we would make our motions. And the way we've done it in the past was not everybody wanted to make a motion. So I guess if somebody felt really compelled, they made the motion first. But unless we get 3 votes, the motion's going to fail. So we're going to have to keep making motions until we can find a motion that we get 3 votes on, if that makes sense.
I don't feel comfortable in assessing one's value up or down in public. I think when it comes to a vote, you vote yes or no.
Well,
you don't evaluate their personality and their values in public. A vote is a vote. A vote is yes or no.
well, other boards, and I could name quite a few, but CCAG comes to mind, and also the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, they do discuss why they are in support of a certain applicant for appointment. It's such an important decision when a board chooses a applicant for the job of being a harbor commissioner. We're essentially acting for the voters. So it's a huge responsibility. It's a big burden too on our shoulders, because what we're doing by not giving this back to the voters to make a choice and calling for a special election is we're putting ourselves in a position where we have to represent for the voters on behalf of the voters. And so I think we owe it to the voters to explain why we prefer one candidate and make the case for that. And that's a very important part of the process that I'm certainly not willing to give up. So I personally do plan to talk about, I mean, at this point, I don't have a clue if anyone's even applied. So I don't have any idea who's going to apply for this. But, you know, I do want to have the opportunity to discuss why I might feel one applicant is more, is going to do a better job on behalf of the voters than maybe another one. So I, just like all the other boards that do that, I want to have the opportunity to do that. I'm not giving that up.
Well, I could see that, but I could also see, with all due respect, not wanting to see a 20-minute discussion on one person from one commissioner. So I think that we have to set a time limit for how long you're going to discuss one person. So would you evaluate that each commissioner would have 1 or 2 minutes to support an individual?
I don't
Wouldn't you do that when you, I mean, I should say, never mind. When you make a nomination, maybe one would motivate it. And that's one option.
to make the speech when we make the nomination.
It's an option. It's not the, certainly there's many ways to do it.
Yeah, you
I
can
don't
do it
wanna
with the
confuse
motion,
what-
and I don't.
I don't want to make this harder on you guys.
I really don't think we should put limits on, we don't know what's gonna happen at this meeting. We don't know, there might only be, you know, one person that applies. I don't know what's gonna happen, but if a commissioner feels they need to say something, I think that this is such an important decision, I certainly wouldn't want to limit their ability to do that.
But I just don't think that we need a half-hour dissertation on how one person's better than another.
Well, I seriously doubt that we would get a half-hour dissertation. I would think that would be pretty unlikely.
All right. I'd just feel better if we had a solid time limit so that each commissioner had a good idea.
Well, we
If
could.
you're going to promote somebody, you have an idea and you say, okay, I got up to 2 minutes.
I would like 5 minutes if that's going to be a rule that we're going to put on ourselves. And I don't want to take 5 minutes, but if I need 5 minutes, I'd like 5 minutes.
Any other discussion on time limit?
And
I think it's way beyond,
by the way, the Coastal Commission gives 5 minutes, so I think 5 minutes is fair.
so, Mr. President, are you, in terms of how each commissioner nominates from the pool, and that does not require a second. All we do is building up the nomination pool.
Okay, well, I see the same questions, no follow-up questions, and I would envision Commissioner Paravano would say, I'm in favor of Abraham Lincoln, and you can make a comment for up to 2 minutes. And then if there was any discussion, or would you see that we'd have 2 or 3 first?
Yeah, see, this is
See
where I
how we're
think,
getting down to the details.
yeah, and I think it's important to have details, because I can see this process. It needs to be very strong and regimented.
We have a process that our old attorney outlined. We could, that could have been included here, so that our old counsel did come up with a process last time we did this. And it was pretty darn detailed, and we did follow it. And it's pretty much what I just described. I mean, what we did was we opened the floor for nominations, and then nominations were made. By the way, no one I ever made a motion to have appointed got the votes needed to get them appointed. So don't think that I had some kind of advantage, because I was completely unsuccessful in my attempt to get anybody appointed to this board. So I'm not so sure what we're worried about here.
So, Mr. President, I think we need to go over the process. There's a nomination pool, each commissioner nominates.
Okay.
And then how do you go from there to voting on the candidate?
You don't nominate. When the floor is open for nominations, you make a motion for a particular person. That doesn't require a second. So it's opening the floor for nominations, but it requires a motion in order for the board to vote to choose someone. And if we don't get 3 votes, then someone else has got to make another motion.
Okay,
And
I
you just keep
understand
going.
that. I'm trying to get beyond this nomination pool that we have. How do you go from a nomination pool to making a motion to select a candidate?
So though everybody's been interviewed, I'm trying to get this straight too, then you'd have up to 5 commissioners, and that means up to 5 names, I'm imagining.
4.
4.
Oh, that's right, yeah. I elected them before they were elected, nominated them. So we've got up to 4 choices, and then we just come down the line, I guess. Whoever said, I nominate.
Nothing can happen unless you get 3 votes. I mean, it's as simple as that.
We're
Without
we're not at that point. We're trying to figure out how do we put names on the floor and then draw the names in order. So if you nominated the first person, I would imagine they'd be considered first. If you nominated the second, they'd be considered second. And then the first person to get 3 votes is there.
I think we're making this way too complicated. What we've done in the past worked. We opened the floor for nominations, and
Okay.
people made their motions. And
Okay.
the person who got the most votes got the appointment. It was that simple. We didn't micromanage it.
Okay, now what I'm not understanding
Okay.
by what you just said. So let's say Commissioner Paravano nominates the first person.
Mm-hmm.
You talking about voting right then and there?
So it's, okay, let's separate it out. So what happens is, he doesn't nominate anybody. What happens is, what we did in the past was, just forget the word nomination. That's where it gets confusing. And I can see why it's confusing, because it is. What happens is, you as the president, you open the floor for nominations. Then each commissioner can make a motion. One commissioner or 2 commissioners might decide they don't want to make any motion. But every commissioner could make a motion, and there could be more than 1 motion per commissioner if things start to go, off the rails. So there's no limit on how many motions can be made. If you don't have the votes, you have to keep voting until you have 3 votes. So maybe you start with Abraham Lincoln, and somebody makes a motion to appoint Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln only gets 1 vote, and then you go through another nomination from another commissioner for George Washington, and so on and so forth, and nobody gets the 3 votes, and then you go back to Commissioner X and they say, I want to nominate Abraham Lincoln again, and then everybody votes again, or sorry, I don't mean to use nominate. I want to make a motion to appoint Abraham Lincoln, and then everybody votes, and they're so exhausted at that point, they're like, yeah, Abraham Lincoln sounds good, Abraham Lincoln gets 3 votes, and you're done. I mean, that's one way it could happen. I'm not saying that's the way it will happen.
Is that clear at this point?
This is totally different from what I'm reading here in front of me.
That's
Okay.
the way we did it last time.
What's,
You were there.
Tell me how you would envision this.
that what I read here is that there is, okay, let's read this together. It is the second paragraph up after, just above the analysis. At the conclusion of the interviews, at the conclusion of the interviews, the commission shall vote to appoint an applicant to serve the remainder of the term for which the vacancy exists. So the first step of that process is all nominations shall be oral and do not require a second. Okay, that is not a motion. All it is you're filling a nomination pool. Once the nominations are received, then the commission shall vote. So this is my question, and I need some clarification on exactly that sentence. Once the nominations are received, the commission shall vote. What order do you envision this vote process taking place?
There are no nominations. That doesn't make any sense. Just because it's written here doesn't make it make
Okay,
sense.
just, we've got to
Okay.
pass that motion to appoint. Just scratch
Yes,
that out.
thank you.
And put motion to appoint.
Thank you.
So the question is whether we vote on the first name that comes up or we get a pool of 3 or 4 names.
What do you mean a pool? There's no pool. Somebody has to make a motion. They're not going to make a motion for more than one person. There's not a pool. They
Okay,
make a
so
motion for
stop.
one person.
One person, and then we vote right then and there?
Yes, and then.
Is that clear?
And if they don't get the votes.
Okay, that's
you
different from what's here.
Okay, because that's what I'm seeing too.
That is how we did it last time.
And apparently last time
Well, I wasn't here last
it was
time.
very critical. And you were one of many people that criticized that process.
No.
So we're trying to find something that is mutually agreeable to everyone. So this is what I'm reading here in front of us is that this is the process. That there should be the votes,
Through the
the
chair.
nominations are received, the commission then will vote from that nomination pool.
Okay, through the chair, I would like to correct the record. My concerns with the process were in 2010, when I applied for appointment to this board. And what happened in 2010 was a completely different process that we haven't even discussed, which was a secret ballot.
Okay, we're not going there.
Okay, so we are gonna do that. That is not an option here. That was what drew so much media.
Yeah, let's try to
scrutiny.
figure out what we're doing here.
Okay, good.
So you bring up, you want several names and then we go down the list? Or do we take the first name, vote, that person didn't get 3 votes, get the second name, vote?
No, you have to make a motion. Someone has to make a motion. This is not a group decision. This is a motion. Someone makes a motion and then you
Okay,
vote.
somehow you're not understanding what I'm trying to say. I guess I've lost the ability to communicate.
I'm
So,
I'm sorry, I'm
someone-
getting frustrated, but I'm.
Someone comes up with a motion to appoint.
Yeah.
Now, do the 4 people bring up a name, or do we vote the very first name? Vote, done, settle, finish, that person's down. The second name,
Yes.
then vote.
That's the only thing that makes sense.
Are you good with that, or would you like,
Okay, what is the order that you envision for
It
making
depends on
motions?
who wants who. We can't foresee the future. We don't even know who's gonna apply. We have no idea at this point.
I'm not asking, I'm asking the order of making a motion. Because that could be a very disturbing process if it's not an orderly process.
Well,
well, I would
it's-
envision each of us calling a name and hoping that we have 2, 3, or 4 names. And then go down the list, because we don't want to vote again and again and again on the same person.
I'm sorry, but I can't follow that logic. I'm trying, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see how that would work. I think that we have to make a motion, and then if the motion fails for lack of 3 votes, then it's on to the next motion. And you just keep going until you get 3 votes. I don't see any way around
Are you
that.
all right with that one?
No,
Okay. And explain,
no.
for the sake of all of us here, how you would envision this.
I would envision that there, each commissioner has an opportunity to nominate a candidate. So what I'm asking for guidance is the process going forward from that step. Once a commissioner has someone that they would like to nominate for a roll call.
Let's go motion to appoint, just to
Okay.
avoid some confusion.
Is your question, Commissioner, in what order should the president call on people to make
That's part of it,
to make
yeah.
motions?
Yeah, it's that way, it doesn't get manipulated.
In the past, the board president has opened the floor for nominations, and commissioners have chimed in with their nominations, and it's been the applicant with the most votes who actually ended up getting nominated. I don't see any purpose in considering anyone that nobody wants to make a motion for. So to me, it seems like the simplest, cleanest process is for board president to open the floor for nominations, and at that point,
Motion to appoint.
then we make motions to appoint, and that's how we did it in the past, and that worked fine. And I don't see any reason why we want to go and reinvent the wheel at this point with some kind of convoluted thing. And the board president, if the board president is selecting the person who makes the first motion, it gives the board president an unfair advantage because they might know how one other person is going to be voting. So it's better to just open the floor and let the commissioners go for it and make their motions. And even if you make a motion, say I make a motion, Commissioner Paravano, and you don't like my motion, you don't have to vote for it, and it may not get 3 votes, so then it will be on to the next one. If you make the motion first, and I don't like your motion, I may vote no, but you may get the 3 votes, and that will just be too bad for me. So that's how we do it here on a 4-member board.
So we vote
For the first person, whoever it is, Commissioner X makes the first motion. Then you got, if there's a 3-person majority that votes on that first motion, then that person is selected.
correct in the process.
Okay, how do we go to the second, if that motion fails or is not successful?
Then
How do we
somebody
go-
makes another motion.
I would say a different commission.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get at,
Okay.
that I'm trying to figure out a protocol to get an equal opportunity for all 4 commissioners to make,
Then we
A
could
motion.
rotate it. We could say, okay, you made your motion, it failed, so let's have a motion from a different commissioner. That could be, but I don't
Yes.
think we can say which commissioner. I
Well, I
think it
think
should
this is
just be
something
another
that-
commissioner.
I think it's something the president has to consider.
Well, instead of having the nominees pulled from a hat, would you be comfortable with the commissioners' names pulled from a hat?
I don't want anything pulled from a hat, because I can see that on the front page of the newspaper, and I do not want any hat tricks during this process. Thank you
Okay.
very much. No
Well,
hats.
It's just an option. It's trying to solve a problem.
Okay.
You have something to say, fill out a speaker slip, please.
So, Mr. President, that's where the issue is how do you go from one commissioner to another commissioner and have equal opportunity for all commissioners? That's,
Well, if I make the first motion and it fails, then I'll ask somebody else, and I don't think we're gonna have 2 other people speaking at once. But we could.
So the second
The floor
person,
would
okay, the
recognize-
second commissioner would talk, and then you would go to the remaining two for making a motion.
You better believe it.
Yeah, if the first two came, then it'd be a third commissioner or a fourth commissioner before the
Okay.
first commissioner went back
If that
again.
happens, I'm gonna talk about it.
So we could rotate.
I don't wanna put that into.
Do we need to put that in motion too?
So one commissioner could not be repetitive
Correct,
in like consecutive motions.
correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Now, all of a sudden, we've gotten interest from the public.
and it's,
Could I add one, this is really your decision, so I'm being very careful not to interfere with it, but there is one, in trying to anticipate what might happen, there's one scenario that I think would be helpful for you all to agree on beforehand. As you know, there is there is a lack of total clarity as to how many votes are required to take action when there are only 3 members present. So I would request that you include in your decision that to be appointed, a candidate must receive 3 votes, and that 2 votes is not sufficient even if there are only 3 present. Or talk about that.
how could we have 2 votes would be a split decision?
Well, not if only 3 commissioners show up for the meeting.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so you
So
want
I
to
think-
add to the motion.
Unless you disagree with me from a, whatever policy perspective you have, I would suggest that you commit that it takes 3 votes to be appointed.
Well, what if only 3 people show up? Then I think it could take 2 votes.
That's exactly.
This is,
That's exactly
this
the
is
question.
the scenario that
That he
I'm
wants you to
concerned
know if you
about.
want to decide that.
So you don't have to decide that now, you can leave that up in the air, and then you will be looking to me to advise you as to whether 2 votes are enough for that, for an appointment of a new
And
board member.
do you have an answer for that now, or do you need to look at it? I'd like to follow the law, whatever the law is.
Well, seems like it's.
It would derail your important conversation to
Okay.
me to advise you on the law on that right at this particular.
Maybe you could advise us on the law at the next meeting?
My advice on the law is going to be that you should consider what's good policy.
Well, I want to know what the law says.
The law is unclear.
Oh,
Different laws say different things. That harbor districts enabling legislation is not as clear as other special districts or cities. Robert's rules, which is your default rule, would provide you with guidance that is not consistent with the Brown Act, and we are in a land of difficulty. So the simplest thing would be to commit to what would be the case if 4 of you are present.
what if, here's another thought, what if is there a way we could, if not all 4 commissioners, I would hate to decide this with only 3 commissioners. I think we need to have all 4 commissioners here for the meeting, and if only 3 commissioners showed up, is there a way we could cancel the meeting?
Sure, you could make a commitment to adjourn the meeting.
I think that would
I
be
mean, it'd be,
preferable.
again, it's what you called an individual commitment, but you could do that.
I would prefer to do that because I really would hate to see this decision made by only 3 people.
Of course, you have to adjourn it so that you can make the appointment by, I think it was December 5th.
But we have some time
Oh,
there.
yeah.
It would be unfortunate if that happened because then everybody would have to come back and,
I mean, someone might get sick. I mean, that's,
Okay.
so we could include that in, does that need to be in the motion too, or can we?
Oh, 3 out of 4, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3, 3 out of 4.
The idea though to,
Get further guidance.
could we include, or should we include in our motion?
the other thing is, I mean, I would just say that if 3 of you show up, any one of you leaving the meeting would cause the meeting to be adjourned. And a new special meeting would have to be
Oh,
called.
okay. Yeah.
But I think we need to have all 4 commissioners.
Right, so I'm saying if only 3 show up,
Yeah,
and any of you, I know that you're not in the habit of working, it's not considered a good practice, but if one of you felt very strongly that you wanted all 4 there, and only 3 showed up, one of you leaving would end the meeting.
well,
And-
that's a good point, I hadn't considered, but I would hate to see us go that route.
I'm not recommending it as best practice, I'm just trying to help you figure out your way through
So Stephen, do you think we need to include anything in the motion about making sure that there's 4 commissioners at the meeting, or we adjourn to a future date?
I don't have a legal opinion as to anything that needs to be in any motion.
That's a policy thing if you wanted to.
There's no need for a motion of any sort at this point. It's really up to
So
you
we
what
could
you want to do.
We could decide that the night. If only 3 of us showed up, we could decide, well, there's only 3 of us here, so.
You can decide all of this tonight.
No, all of this.
All of this the night. In other words, on the 16th, you might
have this
What if
conversation.
you, I don't believe this is going to happen, but what if you just had 3 candidates and you were able to make a decision from that, just looking at the.
So maybe we could just have, that way Commissioner Bernardo will be at our next meeting, we could just decide this business about what to do, whether it's 3 or, well,
He
I
won't
guess
be at our
if
next
we,
meeting.
I don't know what to think.
I mean, if he's at your next meeting, you have 4 commissioners. So.
But this happens on the 16th, and the next meeting is the 18th.
Yes.
So,
That's true, you can adjourn it to the 18th.
I think we're just gonna have to deal with that part of the
Well,
next meeting.
You wouldn't have enough agenda notice, so you'd have to make a special meeting on the 16th for the 18th, Tom.
If there's
It
no
can be
reason,
done.
if there's no reason that needs to be made as a motion, then I don't think we need to discuss it any further, but I'm happy to make a motion and try to consolidate all this stuff, although if someone else thinks they can do it more
I
succinctly.
think the only reason you would want to make it as a motion, because if you don't make it as a motion, although the law is unclear, council's default advice is that it would be Roberts, and 2 commissioners could make that decision and might see that as their opportunity to do so. So if you feel strongly now that you don't want 3 commissioners making a decision, council's suggestion was to say, on a matter of appointment to the board, we want a minimum of 4 members here. Of course, let's hope it never happens that you have 2 vacancies at the same time and you'll be stuck.
I think I'm gonna start making my motion, and then if somebody wants to tack that
Let's
on.
get a couple of public comments here. I think that we've confused the public sufficiently that they choose to weigh in on this. Brian Rogers.
Yeah, a couple of things just from listening to that discussion wasn't really coming clear, and I think you guys were equally befuddled, is that if you do whether you want to call it a nomination or a motion, I don't care. It's the same thing. You throw up a name. Most of the ones I've been used to, she's correct, you vote on it right away. But that doesn't mean that same person couldn't get nominated again. If you go around the room and all 4 of you come up with a name and nobody can agree on one, maybe they get time to think about it and come back. That name comes up again, maybe they get more than just 2 votes or whatever it is. I mean, I doubt there's going to be very many that get thrown up that only get 1 vote. Why would you nominate somebody that you only think you're going to vote for? But again, yeah, that name could come up again. That wasn't discussed out here. The other one is, I mean, if everybody gets to nominate and then you have the group of names, that would give somebody an opportunity to really think through the list that, okay, these are the 5 people that somebody's going to nominate. Those are the ones I got to decide on. You might have a cleaner vote going through that. I could see either one, but yeah, that round table that was going on for 25 minutes was getting nowhere. So, I mean, I don't know if I helped, but yeah, let's see if we can get this done.
Bud Ratz.
My comment was similar to Mr. Rogers, is that it's a confusing process. You guys have really been confused. And basically, to me, you want to put together a pool of names, and that pool of names could be created 2 ways. One is the commissioners nominate people to be in the pool of names, or it could be the total pool of the applicants. And then you have applicant A, B, C, D, or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then the commissioners publicly vote for whoever they want to. You have vote round, and maybe A, B, C, D each get 1 vote. Well, that takes the rest of the people off the table. And then you just keep voting until one of the candidates in that pool gets 3 votes. Very simple. And if the vote is public instead of on a piece of paper, it's a very open process, because you can have discussion after each vote if you wanted to. Thank you.
James Hahn.
I apologize, some of what I was intended to say has already been discussed. Obviously, I just stepped in. I just want to reiterate the comments I left to the commission in my letter earlier today, just to make sure that when you're going through this appointment process, to make sure it's done in a transparent way. I saw a reference to pulling names out of the hat. I think that's a bad idea. I would also just suggest that whatever process you take, it's handled very fairly, that every single applicant gets asked the same questions, that every single commissioner has the opportunity to ask follow-up questions to those questions, and that every single commissioner is allowed to make a motion on their preferred candidate before any votes are made. Thank you.
So I think we're leaning towards each commissioner nominating someone, and it's whether we have a pool or whether we vote on the first nomination. Is there a preference there?
Might as well just do a motion and then, but it's the order. I think that's something that you have to, has to be followed.
I think that in understanding Commissioner Paravano's concern more clearly, that, you know, his worry that a commissioner might make motion after motion after motion without another commissioner getting an opportunity to make a motion. I think that that's something that we can clarify in our motion tonight, that that's not how we're going to proceed.
We'll just rotate.
And then we rotate, and that's the chair, you know, making sure that one commissioner doesn't dominate and make multiple motions in repetitious order. But I did also like the public comment that we can pause to discuss, you know, as we go, if we're not, you know, as we're making motions. There could be pause for discussion, because the point is to come up with a vote where we have a new commissioner. we want to come to a decision, and so it may be a process to get there.
All right, well, we're going to have the information, so we're going to have the total, I'm trying to reiterate this as I understand it. We will have interviewed each of the candidates. We're going to come back. If somebody chooses to make a motion and have up to, as brief as possible, why they support that person, a vote, then the next commissioner or some other commissioner will nominate someone if the first one didn't get nominated or appointed. And we keep going down the line. So is everyone in agreement? And we're clear on that, so we have the process.
I agree with that. I'd just like to add, though, that we should have some opportunity for commissioner discussion before we start making motions. I would like to be able to have, in case something comes up and there needs to be some commissioner discussion in advance of making motions, I'd like to have that opportunity, or like a point of clarification or whatever, that we don't just jump to opening the floor for I'm calling it nominations, but it's really motions, that we do include some.
Discussing the applicant pool.
Yes. In case we need to. I'm not saying we have to. But
Okay,
in
is that
case.
clear to staff if we have that?
They'll read it back, because it's most important that it be clear to you. Okay. So she may not have to read up, so you may have to restate it.
You'll interview each, come back with a motion, then next commissioner will nominate another one, which nominate's the wrong word, but, and then commissioner discussion, discuss applicant pool.
I think we'll discuss applicant pool before the motion to nominate or appoint.
So let me try to put this in order. I'm trying to be helpful here. So after the interviews, all the interviewees can come back in for, you know, the vote. And we start with we start, well, do we need to include in the motion the process for the interview? The 30 minutes, the 20 minutes, and all of that? Does
I
that
think
need?
we've already got that here.
Okay, so we're going with that, okay. So,
So we're going with what's in Tom's
Yes.
suggestion plus what you're giving us.
So now this is how we
Okay, that wasn't clear.
go to the
Okay.
next step.
so in addition to that, once we're done with the interview process, the applicants come back into the room, or maybe they're already there, and then we will have an opportunity for discussions or points of clarification if anybody has a question on the board. And then the board president would open the floor for nominations, which means motions, and then a commissioner will start by making a motion, and then the board president will oversee the process to make sure that a commissioner does not make more than one motion for one, for each. All right, doesn't make more than one motion repetitiously. Does that make sense? So that each commissioner only makes one motion before it goes to the next commissioner for a motion and the next commissioner, and it keeps rotating. As a commissioner, you can make more than one motion, but you can't do it in repetitious order.
Until everyone's had a chance.
So we rotate, and then once all 4 commissioners have made motions, it could go back to the first one, whoever happens to be first.
I'm giving her a chance to finish writing.
But the process by which people decide to make motions in what order is initiated by the commissioners, not by the president. So just to be clear. So it's like open floor for nominations. But once
I'm still a little confused, but.
okay, so let me try again.
So interview each applicant, opening the floor for points of discussion. Open the floor for motions. Yeah.
Okay, you're good, and then the next part
Yeah.
is just a rotation. So after the first commissioner makes a motion,
Yeah,
then it will rotate, and then a different commissioner will make the next
not in
motion.
repetitious order, and then go back to the first.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll find a better, more succinct way to word it, but I think you
I think
get,
we'll have to go back and watch this.
Okay, so we have our process fairly well understood. Is there a motion to accept that process?
One thing that I think we talked about, and we heard in public comment about this, the interview process is based on the same questions for each candidate.
Correct?
Okay.
we can add that in, that each candidate
Based on the same question.
will answer the same set of questions.
So we also said same questions and no follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Well, I prefer follow-up questions, but I'm not going to argue at this point. I want to try to get out of here tonight.
So we like, let's consider that a motion, ask for a second.
I'll second.
So the
Roll
motion-
call.
The motion is Tom's motion plus, I just wanted to be
Plus
really
all the
clear.
stuff we discussed.
Right, and you're pretty clear about it. Okay.
Well, we'll go back and listen to it.
Well, sometimes that doesn't help us. That's why, I really just would like us to have
As
agreement
long as
tonight
we're
on the
clear.
wording.
Second.
So roll call.
Commissioner Brett.
Hi.
Commissioner Paramount.
Aye.
President Mateusz.
Aye. Thank you. On to item 7, cancellation of the November 18th regular meeting of the Board of Harbor Commissioners. Commissioner Brennan's item, staff report.
Yeah, I talked to the new general manager. He really appreciates the thought of giving him a break, but he also is, and I know this from all conversations I've had with him, he's ready to hit the ground running, and he would really like what he described as a short, focused agenda.
Okay. Fine, then I'll just drop the suggestion. So if that's what he's comfortable with, that's fine.
Okay, we did have one public comment in addition. James, lead on.
I just wanted to thank the Commissioner for bringing up this item. The main reason I'm here is just to ask the board president if he wouldn't mind to consider what I said in my letter earlier today, to maybe do a second public comment period for people who weren't able to comment during the first session. Thank you.
Which we did, so that's good. Item 8, authorized to pay bills and claims occurring between, well, item 8 becomes moot because we are having a meeting. Item 9.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second on item 9? Cancel the regular meeting at 6:30 tonight because we're having our meeting now.
Is item 9 in here? I don't have item 9.
We didn't write the staff report, it was pretty obvious.
Oh, it's the purple sheet, okay. So I move that we cancel the regular meeting at 6 PM,
6:30.
6:30 PM.
Second, excuse me, second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvano?
Aye.
President Mateo?
Aye. Okay, on to staff reports. Interim General Manager.
Yeah, for reasons of brevity, it's written. I do want to take this moment at this last meeting to thank you all for allowing me to serve during this period. I'm really looking forward to the transition with the new general manager, and very impressed with the selection you made.
Thank you. I guess I was just glad to see that you noted that we got our hoist up, and I'll look forward to that follow-up. Hoist up, certified and running. And in the interest of time, we'll go on. Thank you for that report. We've enjoyed everything that you've done for us in the district. Director of Finance, perhaps you would like to handle the Director of Finance's report.
And there's none. We do have a report in writing from Marcia, who's not here. I think we do. And we have the written reports from the harbor masters, as what assistant harbor masters. We'll probably consolidate the two in the future.
Right, then I believe we'll just go on to operations. Oyster Point and Pillar Point. Assistant Harbor Masters Draper and okay, I guess.
Yeah, I told them they didn't need to be at these meetings routinely unless.
I just had one quick question about this that maybe our interim general manager can answer. I noticed that this only included Pillar Point Harbor in my packet, not Oyster Point.
No, there should be two.
Oh, really?
Unless you're, I have two in mind.
Oh, they are?
And like I said, we are, I talked with them, of course this is Steve's call, but I talked with them about, we'll combine it in the future. This was sort of our.
I think I'm missing one page or something. But here it just says in the report, it says Pillar Point.
I see Draper's. I don't see John's either. I thought for sure it was here. My mistake, I read it. Oh, no, but here's,
okay.
I found it.
I found
Oyster is way back, yeah.
Yeah, 20 and 32.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to note for the record that our occupancy continues to increase at Oyster Point. We're now up to 70%, which I consider a tremendous step in the right direction, considering what we've been through over a number of years. Pillar Point at 100%, that's probably a function of crab season. I hope that continues. I don't know how long that will hang on. Okay, so Board of Harbor Commissioners. Commissioner or committee reports.
I'd just like to say that the Finance Committee is having a meeting tomorrow, right?
On the 16th, right?
Is it the 16th?
Yeah, I
When
think
is
it was the week before the week before the regularly scheduled meeting that's happening on Thanksgiving.
So you got ready in advance, very good.
I'm ready in advance. Good, I have more time. So that's coming up this month, and that would be, we're doing it on Tuesday, is that right? Was it Tuesday? Because
I have to look at my notes. I thought it was the 16th
before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I thought it was
the 19th.
Yeah, a week later.
The 19th. Okay, so on the 19th at 10:30, we will have a finance committee meeting at the office in El Granada. It's open to the public. Anyone's welcome to join us. And the staff has been very helpful in those meetings, and I just want to convey my appreciation. So thank you.
All right, now we have closed session, and we have the option of foregoing the closed session, I believe. One of them is standing, and we don't have anybody here to make a presentation on the labor code.
Correctly, I do have I'm prepared to do the labor closed session. The question is really those are really for the benefit of the whole board, so the question is whether you really want to do that now or wait. There's nothing that won't hold until your next meeting.
Okay, I'd like to move both of our closed session items to our next meeting.
And I move that we adjourn.
I had two short statements.
Oh, okay, my apologies.
One is that I would like to wish Marcia Snap lots of comfort. She's going through some family issues right now, so I would like to wish her a lot of comfort and solace. The second one is I'd like to thank our interim general manager, Mr. Lazoff, for his services to the Harbor District. I really appreciated all of the outreach and the improvements that you brought to the district. And it was an opportunity for us to rely on services that were temporary, for us it's not something we're used to, but we certainly have become very accustomed to working with regional government services. And I learned a lot about them through your contacts. So I wish you lots of happiness and success in your future ventures, and I thank you for your service to the district.
I think that all your prior public service administration duties have served us very well and have guided us. I don't know if you realized what type of organization you were coming to join and try and straighten out, and how you were going to herd the stray cats here. That I appreciate all your time and effort and everything that you've done for us.
Well, I thank you, and I, as you know from the extension, still will be helping every bit as much as the new general manager would like me to.
Great. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, so do we have a second?
I'll second.
Can we do that by abstent or by acclamate? What's that term? Forgot.
In favor.
Yeah, in favor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Let's go.
Aye.